And we are live. Thank you very much for joining us and listening either live or we didn't get this any promo. We just decided to do it. So hopefully we'll get to watch and listen in later. But I'm here with Jordan Schachtel, and who has a great Substack called The Dossier. I'm sure you all follow it. You all should subscribe. We wanted to talk about what's going on in the news the last couple of days, which is the kind of big thing that is alternatively shocking and yet completely unsurprising if you've been following along for the last several years in really since the election of 2016 and the attempts by, let's say, the permanent national security bureaucracy, which others have called the deep state, in their attempts to basically run national security policy for the United States and veto the will of the voters. These guys have their own. Sort of, let's say, corporate ideological culture. And they are completely committed to it. And any deviation from that culture, so we've seen over the last 4 years, or that particular party line or worldview, gets you called a traitor or worse, a Russian agent, dangerously crazy and incompetent and nuts and et cetera. And these people. What these people have done is so kind of offensive to the idea of the rule by the will of the people and the regime that the founders of the United States instituted, that it manifests itself in really silly ways. So, for example, you could be called a traitor or a Russian asset or something simply for disagreeing with conventional wisdom on the subject of NATO policy. It doesn't matter, any deviation from this, ideological fixation is tantamount to treason. So that's the kind of backstory for where we are. And, Jordan, if you want to take it from here.
Yeah, I thought it would be interesting because I'm seeing a lot of cable news and corporate press outlets trying to discuss the issue, the revelations that came out prior to this Woodward and Costa Washington Post book coming out, in which they revealed that it seems, according to Milley himself, who was the source for this, that Milley took it upon himself to call China, to call Russia, to call his counterparts, all these defense ministers, and tell them that if anything happens, he's kind of like the one in charge. And that was my reading of it. And it was very strange because, right-wing Twitter is kind of going crazy and Fox News about, he should resign. This is treason. And I agree that he should resign and he committed treason. But I think what happened was actually worse than people realized. My interpretation of the transcripts and then today's seeming non-denials coming from Milley, from the Biden administration, basically saying that, he's a patriot and we support him. And there were no denials really happened. My impression is that what Milley did is he got together with the ruling class in Washington, D.C., public meetings with Pelosi, with Schumer, talking about the nuclear codes, really serious stuff. And what he assured all these actors that nothing would happen with President Trump. And President Trump was the civilian commander-in-chief of the military, duly elected president. That's how the system works. No one elected Mark Milley to make these decisions. And what effectively happened, I keep coming back to this, is that a silent coup happened, that the military and the bureaucrats and even some Democrats and maybe even Republicans in Congress decided that we're going to take these powers away from President Trump during his lame duck session as president. And that should be that should totally shock people, and people should be really upset about that, because they took our constitutional framework and just threw it in the garbage. These, especially these unelected bureaucrats or appointees like Milley, who have no authority, and to do these kind of things. And I just saw that Chris Miller, Trump's last Secretary of Defense, said that Milley wasn't authorized to do any of this stuff. So you're talking to the Chinese, the highest Chinese ranking general, and telling him that, basically we're stable, and he's referring to President Trump as the unstable person in the regime, in the U.S. regime. To me, the read on that is obvious. I don't know if you agree with me, but the read on that is that we committed a silent coup and we're stripping President Trump of his authority. Do you disagree?
The only part I disagree with is I'm not even sure we're talking about the lame duck. We're talking exclusively about the lame duck session. I think that as we go on, maybe 5-10 years from now, maybe even sooner, we will find out that the whole time shit like this was taking place. Yeah. From 2017 on. I wouldn't doubt it. I wouldn't doubt it. Obviously it's insane. What you've got is, you've got unelected people freelancing and saying, hey, you know what? This guy is a threat. I don't like this guy. This guy is sort of outside the Overton window on policy for me. Therefore, he is crazy. Therefore, it justifies us, basically removing him from the chain of command in an amazingly unconstitutional way. One reason I'm not surprised at all that this happened is because this is who these people are. Mm-hmm. This is who these people have been. And they really believe this. This is the kind of super patriot mentality. I'm not saying people who are actually patriots are terrible, but people who self-identify as the super patriot deep state IC guardians of America are really overstepping their fucking place, and they have been doing so since 2016.
Yeah, they're a bunch of animals, and they know that they have cover from the corporate press and cable news. I saw that Max Boot was on CNN yesterday, hero worshiping these people. And notice how they will, they'll say, the bad orange man, blah blah blah. He was unstable. All these accusations. Meanwhile, President Trump ran on a non-interventionist campaign. He every time he was talking about defense or foreign policy, it was always about not just going crazy with bombs and military strikes. And he was sucked into some stuff in Syria, and he never was able to accomplish the departure of Afghanistan. And that kind of goes back to your theory that maybe he didn't really have as much control as we thought he did. But these people are cheering on the Milley incident, and it just makes me think you've been so early with the the national divorce stuff, and this kind of makes the case for you that there are people on the other side who think that the Constitution, they haven't considered it, that it matters for quite some time. And this has been very revealing that the Biden regime said, they have full confidence in Milley. They don't care what happened. I mean, the bureaucracy kind of supports what they're doing, and that's all they care about. Whatever happened under Trump, they don't give a damn. The idea that I think that there's a lot of people that are allies of ours that are very delusional about this, and they need to wake up to the reality that Milley isn't going to face some kind of firing squad or any prosecution. These people live in a completely above the law, above repercussions. The reason why someone like Milley would commit to this coup plot basically is that he knows there's no repercussions, because he saw what happened with the FBI. Has any FBI agent gone to prison for trying to launch a coup against President Trump? No. So why not?
They've gotten rich. They've gotten book deals.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I think he made the right decision. I said on Twitter that this is like, to call it treasonous is a little bit OBE. It's overtaken by events. I don't think we're in a place where this could be legitimately called treason. I just don't. I don't think we have a country anymore, which is, a country that has a coherent national defense policy, because it doesn't have a coherent anything policy. When you have, by definition, when you have half the country doing something or advocating a particular policy that the other side can call treason, I'm sorry, it's not treason. It's the dissolution of your country. And that's really where we are. I mean, treason for us today in 2021 is anachronistic. And I mean, years ago, I was thinking about it. I was thinking about what are the things that we've lost. What are the concepts that we've lost over the course of the last 30, 40, 50 years that have been kind of influential in getting us to the terrible place that we are at right now? And one of the things that I came up with was this concept of sedition, very closely tied to treason, if not synonymous. And it seemed to me that, maybe half a century ago, that conception disappeared when it comes to the left. If Black Panthers can't be considered treasonous, if the maybe the last people who are legitimately considered traitors were the Rosenbergs, but everything after that is just like, well, he's making good trouble or bad trouble, or I mean, fuck, Angela Davis is a university professor. Bill Ayers is guilty as hell, free as a bird. The most influential figure in education policy in the United States over the last several decades. We're way past the time where any of this, where treason or sedition means anything.
This is the problem of us trying to operate in a system that wants to destroy us and ruin our lives, right? And that's why it's so important to have these parallel institutions. And related to this Milley Esper stuff, I was looking up what Esper is up to now, because he seems to have taken part in this weird coup thing. So of course Esper has joined multiple board of directors of these defense institutions, and one of them I found does business with the Chinese government. So it's just whatever, right? Imagine, it should be so highly inappropriate in a functional regime for a Secretary of Defense, less than a year ago, to join a defense contractor that's, openly touting its support of the Belt and Road Initiative. But in today's society, this is, I think, what a lot of people don't understand about the uniparty system in DC. The idea that we have foreign, and this is another issue that you've been hammering home way before most people, the idea that we have foreign adversaries is only used by the left to crack down on us. They just don't care. There is no foreign adversary to them that really matters at this point, unless it can fulfill their domestic objectives. And I know you've been saying that for so long, but it's really becoming super clear now. It's not they're not hiding in the shadows and inking secret deals. It's just out in the open now. They just don't care.
Yeah, I mean, thank you for noticing. The last several years, I'm writing and I'm kind of screaming about these things, and you too, and people look at you like you're crazy, and but at the end of the day, I think we've got a far better record on any of this stuff than the doubters. And I'm not even talking about the the folks who are really clueless, who write for The Week and silly place in the Atlantic and silly places like that. But I mean, even folks at nominally conservative publications, just they don't know what time it is, and they haven't noticed this. I mean, one of the pieces I wrote for Claremont, actually, after the 18 midterm election and the Democrats' victory there was that we no longer have a shared conception of allies and adversaries on the world stage.
Mm-hmm.
And for that reason, we can no longer have a coherent foreign policy. We don't know who we are, so we don't know we don't agree on who the enemy is abroad. And if you don't agree on who the enemy is abroad, you literally cannot have a foreign policy.
Yeah, this goes back to what you were just saying a few minutes ago about how the left and the ruling class, they don't view it as treason. So why would they prosecute Mark Milley for treason? What he did was morally virtuous, right? So he should be given another one of his medals, and everyone who participated in this coup they'll get a medal before they face prosecution, right? Like that's just the clown world regime that we are choosing.
Well, now that you bring that up, I fully predict he will get a Presidential Medal of Freedom from Biden.
Maybe it will be some kind of, but at least the political reality right now is that it doesn't look, to play devil's advocate, I think that even the corporate press, because they've been kind of like asking Psaki and trying to get commentary from state and defense, that they realize that the public perception of this is not great right now. So they're trying to like find a way to get out of this. And so I wouldn't be surprised if Milley were to retire. I think that's what they'll probably call it, because they're willing to throw people under the bus if necessary. And Milley, of course, was Trump's appointee, so it's not like they have any type of loyalty to this guy. He's probably done some stuff like overtaken the role of the president, but it's still not enough for him to be thrown under the bus. I think that's a very real possibility. But again, the idea, I mean, you saw it with James Comey, Andrew McCabe, Clapper, all these IC chiefs that committed what in a normal constitutional republic would be horrific crimes, treasonous behavior. These people are living their best lives. They're all, worth 10 times more than they were when they were at the FBI, NSA, going to Aspen Institute, going to, for all these premier foreign affairs events, CFR, they're all members of these boards. They're all part of the club. Milley's going to be part of the club, regardless of, how long he lasts in the Biden administration.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, his place there is assured because of this. Mm-hmm. The idea that he spoke to Costa and Woodward, which is a kind of funny aside. Robert Costa used to be at National Review. So the conservative media is continuing its tradition in clothing and feeding and preparing mainstream media assassins for their work, going after the right later in their career. But yeah, I mean, Milley wouldn't have said anything to them if he hadn't been proud of it, and I think he was immensely proud of it. And you know what? I mean, in a way, he's not wrong as far as the calculus goes.
But how crazy is that, right? That Milley is bragging about a coup.
It's nuts.
It's like the biggest FU to the opposition imaginable. It's just like straight up, I do not care what you think. I will go out of I will shatter your boundaries, your ceilings, and I will just commit all of these heinous, what we would refer to as treason in our republic,
right?
And worse. And he just does not give a shit. And it is shocking. Even this amount of chutzpah is surprising, because I know that the state of the republic is unhealthy, but they took it to such a new level that the in-your-face acknowledgement of this effort is really, it definitely concerns me about what the immediate future is going to look like in the United States. We're still dealing with the COVID fascism, which I think will get worse going into the fall and into the winter. The divisiveness in the country is just, reaching new all-time highs every single day. What do you think? What do you think is the next move for the Biden regime here? How are they going to play this? Do you think that they'll just continue to go with the we have full confidence in Milley thing, and or do you see him eventually getting set aside?
You know what? I mean, I don't know. I think I can go both ways on that. For reasons discussed. I mean, in a way, I don't know. I know that I should be more outraged by this, but you reach a point where nothing surprises you, and very few things outrage you the way they used to. Mm-hmm. Afghanistan was one of those things where I was actually surprised at, what you develop an immunity after a while to some of these outrages. And you just say, well, obviously, we saw that coming. Is it within the bounds of what we expected? Yeah. Okay. Is it some horrible thing that our enemies have done to us? Is it a big middle finger that they're giving us? Okay. We knew that was coming. Whatever, tens or hundreds of thousands of unvetted Afghan, migrants who we've got no idea who they are. Yeah, let's bring them into every red state possible. Let's try to tip the demographics of the country. Sure, let's do it.
This comes like a month after Cubans were trying to flee the Castro, or whatever the new president's name is, the regime in droves, and the State Department basically said,
"We're not going to take
it. Dare come here."
Yeah.
And
how do you feel about child rape?
Mm-hmm.
You're not as progressive on child rape as the Afghans, so you guys can't come in. It's look. I mean, it's completely it's kind of batshit crazy, and as things get worse, I think it's probably healthy to develop an attitude, some outrage calluses, to the point where you're just not going crazy every day, because again, that's unhealthy. I mean, you have to recognize what these people are doing, recognize that they're enemies that want to kill you. But just, sort of to be able to put the emotional aspect aside, because the emotional aspect prevents you from thinking clearly. But more than that, more importantly, it dispirits you. And dispiriting you is the thing that they want to do most. I mean, there's a reason why nobody is condemning this general,
Mm-hmm.
And the top reason is they all agree with him, and they know it dispirits us. They know it pisses us off. I mean, it goes back to a brilliant Obama era tactic from his administration which they called stray voltage, which is that anytime they got into trouble somewhere, do something specifically, calibrated to piss off the right in the country, because they'll be able to weather any storm. I mean, this was a new invention of the Obama years. It used to be, prior to Obama, it used to be that that presidents didn't like to be hated, and administrations didn't like that kind of controversy. But the Obama guys, led by Axelrod and a couple others, decided, hey, you know what? We couldn't give two fucks.
Yeah.
If some Republicans are mad at us. As a matter of fact, it's actually really good, because they get to spin themselves out on things that they, at the end of the day, are completely powerless to change, like Benghazi, like Fast and Furious, like the IRS scandal, and I've even forgotten the rest of them, but there were a bunch. And I totally expected the Biden White House now to kind of use the same playbook, but because it's a very similar cast of characters. But interestingly enough, I don't think they're even half as bright as the Obama guys are. I mean, maybe this is just Joe being Joe, or this is like the C team or whatever it is. But the level of, let's say, communication sophistication where we're at right now versus the Obama years is kind of night and day. It's probably worth writing a piece about it as time goes on.
And it could just be a thing where the chief messenger for your policies and your platforms is Joe Biden. So it's tough to communicate that to the public when you're telling this dementia-addled individual, this is what the policy is going to be, and to try to read it from the prompter as best you can or talk to the press. So they're at a little bit of a disadvantage. Whereas, when you had Obama, he was a very effective communicator especially when he wanted to attack the right. I mean, he was brutally efficient. And when Biden does it, he just sounds like an angry dick. So it's like it's a very different strategy.
And the other institutional aspect too was, frankly, Ben Rhodes is far smarter than anyone in the White House today. And I'm surprised. I guess he's making money. I don't know why he's not there. Part of me expects him to show up at some point.
It is surprising because he could be the most powerful man in DC if he shows up.
If he wanted to.
Yeah. And I think, with Obama kind of hanging around behind the scenes, I think he knows that he probably needs some more support, and that Susan Rice and Ron Klain aren't really sophisticated enough, I think, to do that job to the degree that the other Obama people did. But, I thought it was interesting that the last few days, I was kind of like hanging out at some relative's house, and, they have Fox News, they have CNN, MSNBC on. What Congress has been doing the past few days, I don't know if you've been following this, they've been just yelling about Afghanistan to Tony Blinken. And there's all this shit going on in our country. All these issues with domestic and foreign, and they're just so caught up in the Afghanistan debacle that they're just yelling at Tony Blinken, trying to get their TV time. It really shows to me that Congress is not only not a check on executive power, but they've become, especially during, I think it started in the Obama years, it really ramped up, but right now, the Republican Congress is just as much a problem as the executive branch. Under McConnell and McCarthy, these people, they hate us, and they would have no problem sending us to the gulags too, as long as they're in charge, right? So the idea that we can continue to just vote ourselves out of these historically bad problems going on in America, it's a joke to me. And I think we both have mutual friends that are running for Congress that seem like awesome people, but much more needs to be done than just running for Congress, running for Senate, even. The idea that these people are going, I would love to have some more firebrands, like some, Gates's, Chip Roy's, Marjorie Taylor Greene. These people are so maligned, Louis Gohmert, people that are coming in to make a difference. But the reality is, 535 members of Congress, maybe we have 10 that get it, right? So it's a very, going through the political process is very hopeless right now.
Right, but institutionally, we don't have very many options. We just don't have very many options institutionally. We see what happens when Republicans control the legislative branch, which is to say very little. The Republican leadership makes sure that that nothing is done. And really, we're in a situation where we only move further left.
Yeah. Well, Mitch McConnell, he's going to fight for tax cuts for Amazon and Google. So that's priority 1 through 25, and priority 26 through 100 is for military contractors. Right. And that's another big issue that we can talk about, is the idea that increasing the defense budget is a good idea is such a ridiculous fallacy at this point that it's criminal for people to support the increase of the defense budget. I don't even want to call it the defense budget. It's really just the Pentagon's black budget to do whatever the F they want to do. So the idea that Republicans should be voting yes, that should definitely be, in my opinion, should be one of the litmus tests for future GOP candidates, is what we need to know what they feel, how they feel about the FBI, DOD, especially with this stuff going on. But
yeah, look, if you're a Republican candidate and you don't have a lot to say about the Department of Justice and the politicization of the DOJ and the FBI and law enforcement, I mean, what good are you?
Useless.
What good are you to us? Okay, so you vote for you will sign off on the Clifford Asness billionaire agenda of low taxes and low regulation, so that you can live in Aspen and Martha's Vineyard and wherever the hell he lives. I mean, that's priorities to them, but increasingly for the American people, it's a completely different set of priorities, and these priorities are antagonistic to one another.
Yeah.
But yeah, look, I mean, I you mentioned some of our friends who are running for office in Washington. I'm totally against it, and I've been completely honest with all of our friends, all the people we know who want to run or are running. I think they're wonderful. I totally support them to the hilt, completely. But I just say, run for governor, run for state house.
Yeah.
Make sure that go find yourself, get into a red state and join the legislature and take it over. What's the you have this idea, and we saw. I mean, we can talk about California too, and the total wasteland, useless, political scene out there.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, at the end of the day, there was the old conventional wisdom that needs to die. The old conventional wisdom that said, "Hey, 51% of the vote in the federal government. Hey, we got something. This is it." No, the calculus is different now. I would rather have an 80% majority in a state house in a red state, or a 90% majority, and the ability to get anything done that we want, than sort of whatever 50+1 in Washington, D.C. I don't even think it's a close call, especially for what's coming, and the period that's coming. If we're lucky, if we're not lucky, it's going to be worse. But if we're very lucky, the period that's coming is going to be based red states against the federal government in a variety of different ways, and using, and on different battlefields.
We have to basically turn these states into citadels of based people that are essentially transforming, hopefully, either into their own nations or into their own kind of, shared republics. In that sense, that we need to find a way to break off from this federal regime. I also wanted to go back to Milley for a second, because I think a lot of people are interested in how a guy like Milley and his colleagues, how did they work their way up to becoming these multi-star generals, and what does that say kind of about our overall foreign policy and national security outlook over decades, that we have all these kind of useless, pathetic, woke generals that are in charge of the Pentagon. And I'm wondering what your opinion on this is. That for me, it's kind of like decades of foreign policy and national security ridiculousness has led to this moment where we just have all these pathetic people in the upper echelons of the Pentagon.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. It's a natural devolution. As I say a lot, entropy is a thing. And what ends up happening, I mean, who's the one that said it first? A students hire B students, who hire C students, who hire blah 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 blah. And this is what we've come to. We've created a situation where where the folks in these in the bureaucracy are required to do a lot of graduate school work. and they need PhDs, they need multiple advanced degrees, and in order to get these degrees, they've got to go through what amounts to a system of ideological conformity. And these people are more like academics and professors than they are, military men.
Yeah, Milley is a perfect example. I mean, I'm looking at his resume right now. His bachelor's, he went to Princeton, then he got a master's at Columbia, which is like, the most radical university in America, most radically anti-American founding Naval War College, MIT, and the list goes on.
But this motherfucker spent more time and energy figuring out how he could leapfrog from one elite institution to another in order to make his resume look impressive than he has thinking about winning a war, than he has thinking about, America, the America of the founding, or really his responsibility as a general.
Winning a war, yeah. This guy's calling China, telling them that we're taking the first strike option off the table. It's just like laughably offensive that these people have any grounding in actual. I think that they've probably read the books that we've read, but to the extent that they can kind of process that and put it into the equation of some type of policy formation is just. They just don't get it, and it goes to show you. I've seen all these Milley memes that have emerged, kind of like these Sun Tzu knockoff quotes.
Right, they're awesome. Yeah.
But it's just so embarrassing that these are the people in charge, and it's just another reason to get away from this regime, because it's not just that they hate us. It's kind of like an optimistic thing is that these people suck at their jobs and they're not impressive. So imagine if we could put together something with, we had generals in our republic that had actually learned from the lessons of, this 21st century and even late 20th century or mid 20th century with Vietnam of awful, horrendous wars. And just, I would love to see, some type of parallel institutions created, because there's just no stopping this train to help right now.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, one of the great things here is that, as you said, people now realize that the emperor has no clothes. People now realize that these people. I mean, if you would look at this guy, you'd look. I mean, aside from the fact that he looks like he hasn't passed a physical in decades, but you look at this guy and he's got that, his face, the whole thing. I mean, his haircut. He's got the look of a legitimate general. He's someone who you would see cast as as an extra in a movie like 24 as I
bet he would love to be cast in Hollywood.
Oh, no, totally. But now the American people see these guys and it's like a punchline. Mm-hmm. I mean, a lot of people still have this idea in their heads that that these folks are the same type of people that they thought we knew back then. A lot of people who grew up in the 60s, 70s, 80s. I mean, you had an idea of the competence of some of these people. For example, though the first one to sort of break, I think the first one like this to sort of break the mold when it comes to competence was Colin Powell.
Yes,
I think he was one of these guys who, once he was in the Bush administration, and you actually got to sort of see him up close, and obviously subsequently, his opposition to McCain, and Trump, and basically every Republican since George W. Bush.
Yeah, you kind of use your logic and your reason to evaluate what these generals have been saying for decades, especially about Afghanistan and McChrystal's and what was his name, Petraeus's counterinsurgency plans, and how the media was always hyping this stuff up as brilliant, these philosopher warriors like Mattis. And they were all just full of shit. They had no idea what they were doing. and they were just like drawing these sophisticated graphs. And have you seen the full layout of the counterinsurgency operations?
Right. So that was something that Steve Coughlin and some others used to take to briefings around 2009, 2010 on Capitol Hill and elsewhere when he'd give these briefings. And he'd show this to members of Congress, and the members of Congress would be like, I would see it. I'd be in the room. Members of Congress would be like, people make sense of this? This is insane. And it was brilliant. It was almost like an acid test.
Right.
It's like, if you see it and you think it's great, then it's like, okay, we have nothing else to talk about, because you're obviously
it's like postmodern art in that way, that it's what you make of it, right?
Right. And it's just it's just completely crazy. And so like, this is another episode where at the end of the day it could be laudable, because more and more people need to keep waking up. And that's really been, as far as I'm concerned, that's really been the name of the game for the last couple of years, which is the outrages must continue until more and more people wake up. And I see evidence of the fact that is happening. You cover COVID, extensively. And I'll tell you, as somebody who doesn't really get involved in COVID as much as the kind of, personal local freedom issues around here in Florida, I will talk to people, and folks who were not political 2 years ago, who had no idea who the governor was or who their senators were or whatever, what party they belonged to. Now a lot of them are based, and they, they're just completely outraged. They're furious, as well they should be. And for the first time really in their lives, they're thinking about politics. They're understanding why it matters who your governor is. If it was DeSantis or Gillum, not even the whole state, but really the whole country would have turned out differently. So there are, this is, at the end of the day, it's like, this is a giant public education project that we are all on. And because we don't have that much that it's possible for us to do right now, we don't have power. The only thing that we can do is wait, and like you and I do every day, try to explain what is happening and try to get people to notice the outrages and notice the failures and notice the regime that is completely crumbling and, in my opinion, lacks any legitimacy whatsoever.
Yeah. And one of the biggest hurdles is when we say things like what you just said, disseminating that message to the masses. That's why it's so important to subscribe to Late Republic Nonsense Days Substack, because it's just, Alex Berenson, the top, I guess, contrarian reporter on COVID stuff, who's been a lot more right than he was wrong, has been banned forever. So I think, a ban could come from it at any of us at any moment. We could wake up tomorrow and all our followers are gone. Everybody's gone. So that's why things like Substack are important. Yeah. And these oligarchs just don't want you to know the truth about, where our regime is and what our regime is doing, especially, the COVID and the military stuff is right at the top of their, their hunt for so-called disinformation, is that they are very threatened by these counter narratives, and they will do everything they can to keep the regime in place. So yeah, everyone's support is super appreciated during these times, because, I can't overstate the importance of, the time we're living in, and how important it is just to, for people to get the word out about, the truth of what's going on in this country and even throughout the world at this point in time. Right. Thank you. And to return the favor, the dossier, Jordan's Substack, is one of the things that I read. Is, his posts are, one of the few things I read as soon as it hits my inbox. And Jordan has been doing such great work. Really, since the beginning of this thing, has
has kicked off, you've been on the beat, and you've taken a lot of the slings and arrows, and you've been right. You've been right a lot, and you don't give a fuck, which is which is a really admirable thing. Because of your the positions that you take here. I mean, you just said with the Alex Berenson example. I mean, you could be gone tomorrow for contrarian takes on COVID. I think we both agree that contrarian takes on COVID is not going to be the end of what will banish you from I mean,
Trump's gone for saying that he wouldn't attend inauguration. That was their official excuse. But yeah, so it is 6:59, and we are good religious Jews, so we need to wrap this up and have a nice fast and all that good stuff.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for listening, and we're going to end the broadcast. Be well.